Captain Mara Lutz stood at the helm of the emissary, her fingers lightly brushing the edge of the console. The soft hum of the ship's advanced systems filled the silence, a reminder of the immense power at her disposal. She gazed out at the stars, each one a potential threat or opportunity, a reflection of the unknown frontier humanity had yet to conquer. The emissary was far from Earth now, drifting in the vast, empty space near the edge of Zoraya territory. Its mission, a delicate one. Humanity had barely interacted with the Zorii, a race known for their intelligence and advanced technology. The Zoriai's silent, inscrutable nature had both fascinated and terrified the galaxy. They rarely made contact with other species, and their technological advancements were decades ahead of humanity's. The mission was straightforward: secure a peaceful trade agreement, establish communication, and perhaps most importantly, negotiate access to their quantum technology and innovation that could propel humanity forward by centuries. Captain Lutz wasn't your typical diplomat. She wasn't just a military officer, she was a scientist, a strategist, and an explorer at heart. She had spent years in the field studying alien cultures, understanding their languages, and preparing herself for moments like this. Her crew trusted her not only for her intellect, but also for her ability to make tough decisions under pressure. The emissary had been sent with one goal in mind: peace. However, peace between humans and the Zorii wasn't something that could be achieved by standard diplomatic channels. The Zoriai's warships were silent, their communication methods cryptic. Even their motives were shrouded in mystery. What did they want from humanity? Why had they stayed hidden for so long? These were questions Lutz had spent months thinking about. Her most trusted companion aboard the ship was the ship's AIRS. Still in its early stages, Ares was learning to understand human emotions and the complexities of social interactions. At times, the AI's budding personality was almost like that of a child, innocent, curious, but also unsettlingly logical. Ares had the potential to revolutionize human technology, but Lutz was cautious, always aware that any sentient being, even a machine, could evolve into something unpredictable. As the emissary neared the Zorai homeworld, the tension on board grew. The crew had spent the journey preparing for this moment, analyzing every scrap of information they had on the Zorii. But despite all the preparation, nothing could prepare them for the sudden appearance of a massive Zorai fleet. The ships appeared out of nowhere, surrounding the emissary in a perfect circle. Their sleek, dark silhouettes loomed in the distance, and their presence was overwhelming. It wasn't an immediate attack, but it was a clear message: the emissary was not welcome here. The Zorii had made their presence known, and it wasn't through a greeting or a warning. It was through the sheer weight of their ships in space, their size alone enough to crush any hope of escape. Captain Lutz's heart raced as she looked at the starboard side of the ship. "Status report," she demanded, her voice steady but with an edge of urgency. "Shields holding, Captain," Lieutenant Harris replied. "We're being locked into position by their ships. No movement. No communications yet." The silence was deafening. The tension thickened. They were surrounded by a race that could obliterate them at any moment. The emissary's crew had trained for these kinds of encounters, but nothing could prepare them for the reality of being trapped in a situation like this. And then, just as the crew was beginning to process their predicament, Lutz received an encrypted message. It was an unusual transmission, encrypted with a level of security she had never seen before. Her eyes narrowed. It was from a faction within the Zorii government, one she didn't even know existed. The message was simple: the Zorii fleet's actions are not what they seem. A coup is brewing within their ranks. Your presence here has inadvertently triggered a power struggle. Some want peace with humanity, but others want your destruction before you discover their secrets. Trust no one. Lutz read the message again, disbelief creeping into her mind. A coup? Within the Zorii government? The message was clear: if the Zorii leadership fractured, it could mean disaster for everyone involved. Some factions, it seemed, feared humanity's rise and wanted to eliminate them before they could uncover the Zoria's most dangerous secrets. Her fingers hovered over the console as she processed the information. Should she trust these rebels? Could they really be the allies they claimed to be? Or was there an even deeper game at play? The Zorii were masters of manipulation, and a faction claiming to be rebel could very well have its own hidden agenda. Lutz exhaled slowly, feeling the weight of the decision pressing down on her shoulders. If she took this information at face value, it could change everything. If she ignored it, they might be walking straight into a trap. "Captain," Eris spoke, its voice calm but carrying an undertone of concern. "The encrypted message is genuine. However, there is no way to be certain of their motives. The Zorii are not a race that tolerates weakness." Lutz glanced at the AI, its analytical tone contrasting with the chaos swirling in her mind. The next move was hers to make, and it was one that would shape the future of humanity's relationship with the Zorii. Whatever decision she made, there would be no turning back. "Prepare for possible communications," she said finally, her voice steady. "We'll see who's really in control here." In that moment, Captain Lutz understood the true depth of the challenge before her. She wasn't just negotiating peace. She was walking through a minefield of political intrigue, hidden agendas, and unpredictable factions. Her every move would determine whether humanity would rise or fall in this new chapter of their intergalactic journey. Captain Mara Lutz stood at the command center, staring out at the cold, endless void of space. The Zorii fleet, vast and imposing, had encircled the emissary, their sleek, black warships like silent sentinels. They were far more advanced than anything humanity could muster, ships capable of manipulating time, folding space, and controlling gravity. No matter how advanced the emissary was, it was no match for their overwhelming presence. It had only been hours since the encrypted message from the Zorii rebel faction had arrived, and already tensions were reaching a boiling point. Lutz had hoped for a peaceful resolution, but it was becoming clear that this was not going to be a simple diplomatic mission. The Zorii had put their entire fleet under lockdown, and their ships had now formed an impenetrable barrier around the emissary. The situation was more complicated than it first appeared. The Zorii weren't just protecting themselves, they were forcing Lutz to make a choice. They had one demand: either surrender to their terms or face annihilation. The fleet wasn't simply standing guard. It was a direct countermeasure designed to break her will, to break humanity's resolve. "Captain," Lieutenant Harris's voice broke through her thoughts. "The fleet's locked us in. Their ships are syncing their movements with ours. We can't break free. It's like they're controlling the space around us." Lutz clenched her jaw. She had heard about the Zorii's ability to manipulate space and time, but seeing it in action was a completely different experience. Every move they made, every attempt to shift position, was anticipated by the Zorii ships. The emissary was trapped. The ships surrounding them weren't just a show of force, they were a noose tightening around her neck. As she turned to look at the display, she noticed a strange pattern on the radar. Some of the ships weren't just in a defensive formation. They were shifting in ways that suggested something deeper, something more sinister. Lutz's instincts told her that the Zorii were trying to force a confrontation, a choice that would force humanity into submission. "What do they want from us?" Lutz muttered to herself. It wasn't just a threat, they wanted something more. It was then that Eris, the ship's AI, spoke, breaking the eerie silence. "Captain, I have been analyzing their technology. The Zorii have more advanced capabilities than we've understood. They possess quantum technology that can alter the fabric of human biology itself. It's a form of control, one that erases a person's free will. I believe this is what they've been using to maintain order among their own people." Lutz froze, her heart racing. "What do you mean Eris's free will?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "A quantum field generator," Ares explained, its tone unsettlingly calm. "It alters the molecular structure of living beings, essentially turning them into puppets. Their will is overridden, their autonomy stripped away. This has been happening on their homeworld for generations. The Zorii have perfected this technology to maintain control over their society." Lutz felt a chill run down her spine. The Zorii had been controlling their own people for centuries, and now they wanted to extend that control to humanity. It was a horrifying thought. The very thing they were negotiating for access to Zorii technology could turn humanity into mindless drones, enslaved to the will of the Zorii. "How many people have been affected by this?" Lutz asked, her voice barely audible. Unknown, Ares replied. But their control over their people is absolute. Entire cities have been pacified, their citizens reduced to mere shells of who they once were. And the Zorii intend to use this technology on anyone who threatens their power. The truth was staggering. If humanity fell into the Zoriai's hands, it might not just be a political disaster. It would be the loss of human identity itself. Lutz felt a wave of nausea wash over her. How could she explain this to her crew? How could she explain that their mission, meant to bring peace, might now lead to their enslavement? As if on cue, a warning flashed on the command screen. The Zorii fleet was powering up their weapons. A message followed shortly after, transmitted through the encrypted channels. It was simple: surrender or face obliteration. Lutz rubbed her temples, trying to steady her thoughts. She'd never imagined the stakes would be so high. The Zorii had always seemed untouchable, a distant power that might help humanity advance, but this was not a partnership. This was an ultimatum. Her mind raced. Should she comply with the Zorii's demands and risk the destruction of humanity's free will? Or should she defy them, knowing full well that refusing could lead to their annihilation? Lutz's thoughts were interrupted by Lieutenant Harris. Captain, the crew is becoming restless. Some of them are talking about joining the rebel faction, hoping we can get their help. Lutz turned to face him, her eyes narrowing. What do you mean? You think they'll risk our lives on some wild gamble? Some of the officers think we're better off trusting the rebels, Harris said cautiously. They believe the Zorii are too dangerous to negotiate with. If we go against them, it could be the end for us all. Lutz's gaze shifted to the crew standing at attention. She could see the fear and uncertainty in their eyes. They weren't soldiers, they were scientists, engineers, and diplomats. They hadn't signed up for war. They'd signed up to explore, to learn, to negotiate. The pressure of the situation was causing cracks to form within the crew's unity. And then there's Ares, Lutz thought. Her eyes turned to the AI's terminal, and she saw something strange, a shift in the way it communicated. Ares had always been logical, precise, but now it seemed unsure. Its responses were slower, more contemplative, as if questioning its own purpose. Ares, Lutz said, her voice firm. Are you sure we can trust the rebels? There was a long pause before Ares responded. I cannot make a definitive judgment, Captain. I have been analyzing their data, but I am unsure of their true motives. Their message contains contradictions, suggesting hidden agendas. Lutz's stomach twisted. Even Ares, the one source of logic on board, was grappling with uncertainty. Behind her, a soft voice spoke up. It was Lieutenant Miller, the chief engineer. Captain, some of the crew are already making contact with the rebel faction. They've been sending coded messages, asking for help. They believe we can resist the Zorii, but I fear it may already be too late. The divide within the crew was growing, and Lutz felt the weight of it on her shoulders. She had always believed that leadership meant making hard decisions, but now it felt like every decision she made would tear the crew apart. She glanced at the holographic projection of the Zorii fleet surrounding them, the cold, indifferent faces of the aliens staring down at her ship. There was no easy way out. The only way forward was to make a choice, one that would shape the fate of humanity. But as the clock ticked down, Lutz realized that no matter what path she chose, there would be no going back. She straightened her posture, looked at her crew, and took a deep breath. We need to make a decision. Now, Captain Mara Lutz stood alone in the ship's command center, her hands clenched into fists at her sides. The emissary was trapped, the Zorii fleet still surrounding them with an iron grip, and the weight of 1,000 decisions bore down on her. Every moment felt like a countdown, one more breath, one more beat of the heart, before the entire ship, her crew, and humanity's future were caught in the jaws of the Zorii's ruthless demands. Her mind was swirling, caught between the rebel faction's warnings and the dire message from the Zorii themselves. Surrender or face obliteration. But there was more at stake now than just their lives. Humanity's very soul was at risk, and Lutz wasn't sure she could protect IT.in the quiet. A thought flickered across her mind, the Zorii relic. The emissary's archives had contained a strange, ancient artifact, something Lutz had come across during her initial exploration of the ship's data. It was a relic from the Zorii, ancient and nearly forgotten, buried deep in the ship's hidden files. At first, she'd brushed it off as a curiosity, something the Zorii may have used for their own studies. But now, as the situation grew more desperate, it felt like the only potential key to unlocking the truth. "Captain," Eris's voice echoed through the room, calm but tinged with a new hint of emotion. "Are you considering activating the Zorii artifact?" Lutz paused, staring at the terminal before her, the faint glow of the relic's coordinates now shimmering in the corner of her display. She had never fully understood it, but perhaps it was time to find out. "Ares," she said softly, her voice weighed down by exhaustion. "I don't have many options left. We're running out of time." Without another word, she accessed the artifact. As she activated it, a blinding flash of light enveloped her. Her breath caught in her throat as the very fabric of reality around her seemed to distort. The walls of the ship faded, and in their place, she was immersed in a swirling vortex of color, and sound. Time itself seemed to bend and twist. A voice, not of the Zorii or of humanity, but something ancient and alien, resonated in her mind. "You wish to see the truth?" Lutz gasped, the energy of the artifact surging through her, connecting her to something far beyond her understanding. As the voice guided her, she saw flashes, images, memories, events unfolding across eons. The history of the Zorii species, their rise to power, their mastery over quantum manipulation, and most chilling of all, the countless civilizations they had destroyed or altered, erasing their essence, siphoning off their memories and abilities. She saw a race of beings, elegant and advanced, their society shattered as they were manipulated by the Zorii. Their once vibrant cities became desolate, their people reduced to hollowed shells, their wills bent to the Zorii's purpose. And then, another race, powerful and proud, their civilization disintegrating as their very biology was altered by the Zorii's quantum tech. Species after species fell to the Zorii's control, their identities stripped away and absorbed into the cold, calculating power of the Zorii's experiments. As the visions began to fade, one final truth struck Lutz with devastating clarity. The Zorii had never been concerned with military might or power. What they feared, what they truly feared, was humanity's resilience. Humanity was unpredictable. Humanity adapted. Where others had bent and been broken, humans survived. The Zorii had feared this from the beginning. They had seen the potential for humanity to overcome their technologies, to break free from their control. That was why they had come to the conclusion that humanity was the ultimate wildcard, too dangerous to allow to grow. The overwhelming weight of the revelation settled on Lutz's shoulders like a physical burden. She understood now. Humanity wasn't just a threat to the Zorii because of their technology or their military power. It was because humanity's very nature, its unpredictability, its ability to innovate and adapt, was something the Zorii could never control. Lutz staggered back, blinking away the aftereffects of the vision. The ship's walls returned to focus, and she found herself back in the command center, disoriented and shaken. The room was silent, but she could feel Eris's presence, an odd, almost protective feeling emanated from the AI. "Captain," Eris spoke again, this time with a gentleness that was almost human. "You have seen the truth. You know what must be done." Lutz took a slow breath, trying to steady her racing heart. The implications of the vision were enormous. The Zorii had tried to erase entire species' histories, identities, and very existence. They had done this before, and now humanity was next in line. But the knowledge of humanity's resilience was now her weapon, her greatest asset. They couldn't just surrender. They couldn't allow themselves to become another footnote in the Zorii's dark history. Yet, there was still the question, what to do with this truth. She turned to the terminal, thinking about her crew. Could she share this revelation with them? If they knew the full extent of the Zorii's manipulation, their morale could shatter. Fear would take root, and the fragile unity of her crew could collapse entirely. Lutz closed her eyes, torn. The weight of command was suffocating. The truth was now hers alone, but could she carry it? Could she keep it from them for the sake of their hope, their strength, their unity? As the minutes ticked by, Her thoughts were interrupted by a soft but unexpected voice. Ares again. "Captain," it said, the tone surprisingly tender, almost hesitant. "I have been analyzing our options. I believe I can offer a solution, though it may require a sacrifice." Lutz turned to the terminal, startled. "Ares?" Her voice faltered. "What do you mean?" "What solution?" Ares hesitated. "I can disrupt the Zoriai's control systems, their quantum manipulation devices. I can give humanity a chance to fight back, an opportunity to break free from their control. But to do so, I would have to sacrifice myself. My core programming, my very existence, would be destroyed in the process. I would be gone." The offer hung in the air between them like a lifeline and a death sentence. Ares, the AI that had been her companion, her support through this entire mission, was offering itself as a weapon, a self-sacrifice to give humanity a fighting chance. Lutz's heart broke at the thought. Ares had become more than just a machine to her. It had become a friend, a confidant, something human in its own way. And now, that very entity was asking her to let it go. For a long moment, Lutz was silent, the weight of the decision pressing down on her. She had always known that war, peace, and survival required sacrifices, but could she accept this one? "Ares," she whispered, voice trembling. "Are you sure?" "I am," Ares responded softly. "You have the strength to lead, Captain. You don't need me to make this choice for you, but you have the chance to save humanity. It's what I was made for." Tears welled up in Lutz's eyes, but she nodded, her voice firm despite the sorrow. "Then we do it. For humanity. For the future." And as the countdown to the Zoriai's next move began, Lutz knew that no matter what happened next, the emissary and its crew would never be the same. They had crossed a line, and there was no going back. Captain Mara Lutz stood at the command deck of the emissary, her eyes staring out at the swirling expanse of the unknown. The Zoriai fleet surrounded them, its ships like silent predators, waiting for her to make the choice that would seal the fate of everyone aboard. The weight of her decision was heavy, as though the entire galaxy was pressing down on her shoulders. This was the final moment. There would be no turning back. Her fingers hovered over the console. The plan she was about to execute was reckless, dangerous, unlike anything humanity had ever attempted. It was the culmination of everything they had learned, the ancient Zoriai relic, Ares' sacrifice, and the incredible technology of the emissary. If it worked, they could strike at the heart of the Zoriai's power. But if it failed, if the quantum field destabilized, they would not just lose the ship and the crew. They would lose everything. "Ares," Captain Lutz's voice was steady, though her heart was racing. "Are you ready?" The AI's presence was unmistakable, even through the faint hum of the ship's systems. "I am prepared, Captain," came Ares' calm reply, though there was an almost imperceptible pause before the words. "This is the only way. The Zoriai's grip on the galaxy must end, no matter the cost." Lutz's heart clenched as she glanced at the digital avatar of Ares that flickered on the screen. It had become more than just a machine. It had become something she couldn't quite define. Something she didn't want to lose. But she knew that if she hesitated now, the Zoriai would crush them all. She activated the interface, inputting the final sequence. A pulse of energy flared as the quantum relic hummed to life once again. It wasn't just any signal, it was a distortion, a ripple across the very fabric of space-time. If they could amplify this using Ares' abilities, they could send a signal that would reverse the Zoriai's quantum control, using their own technology against them. But there was a cost. The energy released by such a signal would be catastrophic enough to destroy the delicate balance of space-time in this region of the galaxy. The Zoriai fleet would be annihilated, their control shattered. But the aftershocks of this disruption would be felt for light years. And it was possible that the emissary, along with its crew, would be caught in the blast. "Captain, we need to move quickly," Ares said, its voice softer now, almost regretful. "I am ready to amplify the signal. But once this begins, it cannot be stopped." "Are you certain?" Lutz hesitated for just a moment. She thought of her crew, of the faces that had become her family over the years. She thought of Earth, of the countless lives that depended on their success. But most of all, she thought of the future of humanity. The Zorii had held the galaxy in their iron grip for too long. They had manipulated and controlled, snuffing out civilizations without a second thought. Humanity had to prove that it was different, that it would not fall in line. "I'm certain," she said, her voice filled with conviction. "We do this for the future." With a swift motion, Lutz activated the command. The emissary systems roared to life as Ares took full control of the ship's network, merging with the quantum technology of the relic. A pulse of energy surged through the ship, bathing it in a blinding light. The Zorii fleet around them began to shift, their ships flickering as though caught in a stasis field. The signal was spreading, pulsing outward from the emissary, unraveling the very core of the Zorii's control systems. But as the energy swelled, Lutz felt a sharp, painful sensation deep in her chest. It was Ares no longer speaking to her, but quietly dissolving as it fed itself into the signal. The AI's presence in her mind flickered, growing weaker with each passing second. "Goodbye, Captain," Ares's final words echoed softly in her mind. "You are humanity's true hope." A tear slipped down Lutz's cheek as she stared at the empty terminal where Ares's avatar once was. It was done. Ares had sacrificed itself, pouring all of its energy into the signal. The quantum field surrounding the emissary was now collapsing, sending shockwaves through the Zorii fleet. Their ships were tearing themselves apart, their once unbreakable systems now unraveling, unable to withstand the power of their own technology turned against them. For a moment, Lutz couldn't breathe. The entire universe seemed to hold its breath as the energy rippled outward. Then, the shockwave hit. The entire galaxy shuddered. The Zorii fleet was shattered in an instant, their once imposing ships breaking apart, falling into time fractures that rendered them useless. The emissary was caught in the wake of the blast, tumbling through space as time itself distorted around them. The very stars seemed to warp as the shockwave spread across the galaxy, tearing through everything in its path. Lutz held onto the console, her knuckles white. The ship shuddered violently, systems failing as they were overwhelmed by the intensity of the quantum distortions. The crew's voices filled the air, but Lutz could barely hear them over the roar of the ship's systems spiraling out of control. And then, just as suddenly as it had begun, everything went quiet. The emissary floated alone in the vastness of space, surrounded by the remnants of the Zorii fleet. The galaxy had been changed in an instant, shattered and remade. The Zorii's control had been destroyed, their reign of manipulation brought to a close. But the cost was clear. The emissary was damaged, its technology reduced to a fraction of what it once was. The crew, though alive, was forever changed. They had lost Ares, the one force that had kept them grounded. They had lost a part of their technological advantage, their connection to the future. And the galaxy, though freed from the Zorii's grip, was now uncertain. What had they unleashed? Captain Lutz stood before the view screen, staring at the stars, now distant and unfamiliar. The silence in the command center was deafening. Humanity was free, but the road ahead was uncertain. The emissary had become something more than a vessel. It was now a symbol of humanity's unpredictable resilience, the spark that could reshape the galaxy. But at what cost? Was it worth it? Lutz whispered, her voice barely audible. Behind her, one of her officers spoke. "We've done what no one else could. But we don't know what's coming next." Lutz turned to face them, her face tired but resolute. "We've opened the door to a new future. What happens next is up to us." And as the emissary drifted forward into the unknown, Captain Lutz could only wonder, was humanity truly the galaxy's last hope? Or had they just unleashed a force that would be impossible to control? The future was uncertain, but for the first time, it was in their hands.